the attorney.
Do you guys have an agreement on the other piece yet? Or do you have something?
The agreement is being considered.
Okay, then can we move on to the Attorney General's report? While we're waiting for.
Oh, yeah.
As you guys can see from the board report that was circulated, the average age of investigation file is sitting at 7.85 months. We have 63 total open investigation files right now, and our average age of litigation file is less than a year. We're at 10.66 months, and we've got 22 open litigation files. Obviously, those numbers have changed after today. And then we do have, of the litigation file resolutions, just so you guys can see that, I think it's interesting, but we have one that was issued a warning letter, one that was closed without any litigation, and then 2 letter of reprimands. And I think that one of the trends is that even if we're opening up these litigation files, sometimes we can get those closed out without bringing a full hearing before the board or having litigation. Any questions? No?
Succinct, to the point. Wonderful. Thank you.
Did you time it?
You were over a minute. It's not award winning, but it was awfully well done. Sorry, stick around.
So we can move to one discussion topic if we want. And then we'll have an agreement or something, we'll know something by then. We can hearings or. No, I can't switch my brain to that right now. The DBM license exemptions.
That would help you.
No. You guys will might have a lot to talk about, but the exemptions. So, this exemption has been brought to my attention multiple different ways, and we get calls on this probably once a week, sometimes more. We get calls or emails from veterinarians who have graduated from a foreign college or foreign veterinary school that are in the pay for the ECFVG program, have not taken the NAPA yet. And so under our Practice Act, the exceptions under B9 says a graduate of a foreign college of veterinary medicine who is in the process of obtaining an ECFVG certificate or a PAPE certificate and who is under the direct supervision of the faculty of the School of Veterinary Medicine at Purdue University or a veterinarian license under this article. And that's it. We have no rules on this. We don't track these people. We have heard indirectly that there may be somebody who's been enrolled in one of these programs for like almost 30 years.
How long can it be?
We don't have any rules. So, what would you guys like to do?
You get to decide.
To figure out a cap on that.
Is there a known typical time frame as far as like the average person that goes through this
I mean,
process?
ECFEG is a 1 year.
That's
The
in my
paid program is done via being out in practice, right? So it's.
Yeah, but the problem is if you fail, know the ECFEG program, you could keep taking it, right?
I don't know if there's I think there's a frequency due to form changes, but I don't know if there's necessarily a limit on how many times you can take it.
But if you can stay in the program and not take the test, that's also a problem. So.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's why we brought it up. We had a case where a motion for a cease and desist was filed several years ago against someone, and he had been enrolled in the program then for like 10 years and had failed the exam multiple times. Hadn't even gotten to the ballot part.
What's the, is it 5 for the NAP?
5 attempts?
Yeah.
Yeah, but can they get approval to take it again? I think they
Are
can
you talking
appeal.
Natalie rules or?
Yes, I'm trying to use that as a framework.
I think they can still appeal to us though, to the board
And
and.
take the NAP again.
I don't know if Natalie has any. So oftentimes what the pickle that they find themselves in is the frequency in which you can take those exams, because they only create so many forms within a time period and they don't want duplication of, trying to rush it. So I think it's either once or twice a year is the frequency in which you can try to take the exam. I believe that is set by Natalie, right, for form continuity, as opposed to the question, maybe does the board have a limit? Does the board have a limit of number of tries? Are you asking, which direction are you asking?
Well,
Or both?
either,
Yeah,
just to
okay.
say, is there some precedent to say, okay, if our graduates here can only do it so many times, then we just, that way it should be.
So under the Practice Act, veterinarians and RVTs or applicants, if they have failed either the BT&E or the NAVLE 3 times, then they have to get permission from the board to take it 4th time. But, and I know that's the same for the AAVSB for the BT&E, but I think the NAVLE might actually be 5 times before they require.
But we've never turned one down because the concept was when push came to shove and we argued about it, or discussed it, I guess I should say, it wasn't an argument. We never felt we could restrict somebody's dream or prevent them from attempting, even though we thought, you're not even close, I mean, you're not gonna make it,
They're not
wasting your money, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the vet techs under the NAVLE are not practicing,
They're
they're
about
veterinary
assistants, and
assistants.
even the DVMs are not practicing if they haven't passed their NAP.
But that still comes before us. I'm not sure I understand.
But isn't
The
the person
difference
in the.
Well, I was just talking about the number and
Can you
why
explain
the
the
number.
the certificate and the?
Can anyone explain that program?
I mean, the ECFEG program is typically run by vet schools that require a foreign grad to come in and spend a year rotating through much the way a senior student would, to make sure that they have competencies in all the areas that they should have a veterinary degree in the US. I'm less familiar with PAVE, but.
So it's graduated from a foreign veterinary school and then
Trying to get them.
trying
Not
to get their people
avian,
to.
not avian.
Right,
credit.
before they
Not
apply for
yet, not
licensure,
Correct.
before they take the NAP.
Before they take the NAVLE, which then equals them.
Okay.
So the ECFEG process is generally trying to quantify and ensure competency prior to taking the licensing exam. So it's trying to encapsulate their education because their education is quote unknown because they didn't go to an ABMA accredited.
But right now, they're exempt from licensure requirements, so they can
If they are,
start practicing.
yes,
Under the.
Drug
under
supervision.
During supervision of that.
And how, if you are a vet going to vet school and you haven't taken your NAPLE yet, how can you practice?
You can.
That feels like a mismatch.
But we can't go through that school over and over every 4 years. There's a limit to that too.
There's actually not a limit to how many times you go to vet school. I just,
But
I
you
wouldn't
gotta
want
try.
to.
Yeah,
Give it a that, you know.
So,
Well, that's what my
yeah.
question is, right now, if you're in this program, you can practice under direct supervision. That would be, for all intents and purposes, considered, you're just still in school.
Correct. I
Yes.
think that's because you're on.
Yeah.
But
But
you
if
are
you're
exempt from licensure.
Right, I'm asking why.
So I'm trying to clarify.
Yeah.
So should you
Good
even be,
question.
versus should we put a time limit, is that, are you allowed to practice in that scenario?
well, so this is a statute,
Right.
so we can't
Change it,
change it.
but that's one question.
But I think there are lots of competent foreign graduates who come to this country in an attempt to practice here. They go through the right path, they do their ECFEG and they go on, but they are practicing veterinarian in their own country. But we just don't have the ability to police all the vet schools in all the countries of the world. So we require them to do this program. But being under the supervision of a licensed veterinarian, hopefully they're getting the proper guidance to get there.
Very expensive, and there's a long
Very,
wait list,
yeah.
because there's a practical portion too.
That, I have a lot of calls that they've actually already taken the NAVLE and passed, and they wanna know if they can get a license with that, and like, they're just waiting to take the practical, and it can take like 3 to 5 years to get just a spot.
Well, today, actually, they're having their ECFEG surgical skills. That's a pretty started testing site. Yeah, there's such a long way.
There's also an English language proficiency requirement in the ECFEG process. I did check for NAVLE. It is now, as of this year, March of 26, a 5 attempts total forever. No waivers will be granted for anyone,
Which is heartbreaking.
but you get 5 attempts total ever.
But that's what I'm saying, well, we can't let somebody who didn't even go to school here take this test every year for 30 years or every 5 years for 30 years. That doesn't seem right.
How do you, so we have many specialists that went to that school in another country, but they've never taken that.
Right, because
So
they
Purdue,
Because
practice
they're
at
at Purdue,
Purdue.
and there's no limit to that.
No limit to.
Purdue doesn't really have any.
We know.
We also don't know who those people are. I mean, well, right, but we don't have a list, and
No, it's fine. Totally fine. I was just
For
curious.
purposes of discussion, would this be something we would bring up to change in statute, or is there something else we can do to?
it could be, I mean, it could, if that's how you want to approach it. We can also do a rulemaking in the interim. I mean, at minimum,
It feels reasonable that there would be like the same personal appearance or something after a certain time where you have to come in. Like how they have to come in and petition to ask to take a test again, and they give you.
I mean, at minimum, like, give them a permit of some sort, like, because we don't know who they are, and we don't know who is supervising them.
So there's no, yeah, because I guess no license, there's no reason to be connected to the board.
They are exempt from licensure.
and the purpose of today is to have this discussion because we have been asked recently some questions about this very specific, potentially some individuals operating within this very specific exemption. And we just wanted to get your all's thoughts on, do you think it's an appropriate exemption? Or should there be additional conversations from either the agency or the legislator in that space?
It cannot be open.
Okay. That's great. But we just wanted to get the pulse of the board before we started doing, putting legwork into.
But I want to make sure that the context of not, like, what she's saying, if they're limited because they can't get the test for 3 years, they can't
Yeah,
make it a
that's-
1 year exemption because they can't do it.
Yeah.
But
curious if there's an alternate registration method for anyone practicing under the exemptions, just so you have a list and the board knows
So the
like,
board-
who's actually practicing veterinary medicine versus.
The board does have the ability to issue special permits, we've just never done it. So we could
Look into that.
require that at minimum.
That way you can keep track of how long these people have been in these programs and whether they're just.
Because then there's other types of exemptions too, that just gives the connection of how many, they're not counted in any of our vet counts, when we are looking at state coverage and whatnot.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, we can definitely.
And that would just be that exemption, not the one, because the one where these residents and even senior clinicians who come into the vet school, like, this happens all over the country. So that exemption, I think, needs to stay there because we don't want to close those doors and not bring all that talent that from across the globe that we can get into.
And I think probably one of the reasons why that exemption is there is that's a little different setting.
Right.
You know, they're
They're in an educational program.
Yes, and that program, be it Purdue or be it any other veterinary school, they're not going to take chances of having someone who is incompetent doing things.
Yeah.
We did out pretty quickly that, hey.
Yeah.
I would just say it's probably hard for us to really make any determinations without really understanding the scope of, like, is this 3 people? Is it 400? What's, how many are out there? And if there's an avenue to have some sort of connection, and then we can at least have data going forward to say
It's always a good first
what
step
makes
into
sense
that.
or what doesn't.
The other kind of protection around Purdue to remember is that they are an accredited entity. So the accreditation process would review their curriculum being taught regardless of who's teaching it, right? So even if they have unlicensed veterinarians from foreign countries teaching or instructing or providing clinical skills, the program itself is still being accredited, even though that veterinarian might not be licensed. So there's another feedback mechanism in that whole process that isn't a private practitioner out in the field getting services and unaccredited.
What did you say the board can issue?
Special permits.
So they can do surgery, they can do anything a veterinarian can do, as long as they're under the direct supervision.
And remember that direct supervision is the licensed veterinarian has to be on the premises, but does not have to have eyes on.
To be in the award.
Correct.
So what happens when there's a complaint about one of these people? It never shows up here, right? That's how,
Now, they technically have to be supervised by a licensed veterinarian,
so then that would go up to the person who was supervising?
possibly. There is a statute that would fit that, for disciplinary purposes, but we don't even know who those people are. So if we implemented some sort of permit, I think that they would have to identify their at least one supervisor.
I want to like overcomplicate things, but it does feel like in the licensure world, it is a little complicated because you're trying to see some connection with who's practicing.
We can definitely take a look into that space further. But just wanted, in case you all hear anything about that topic, wanted to make sure that that's also on your radar because we are getting close.
There's also concerns that there's no veterinarian actually supervising these people.
Right.
I mean, that's,
Legitimate concern.
because you don't have to be a veterinarian to own a.
No.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's not coming.
But I just, yeah, open one.
And we don't regulate veterinary clinics.
So something like, just so you have an idea, kind of the sticky wicket that this gets into pretty quickly is because there's not a requirement for a veterinarian to own a like the physical clinic, which I don't want to suggest is the right answer, but it's not. If there is not a veterinarian there, generally that burden falls on the licensed individual, which is the veterinarian. So, get that. Usually a private practitioner retires out and, or unfortunately passes. And so then who's the responsible party for medical care?
How do other industries handle that? Are they?
I don't know.
I think other jurisdictions handle it as whoever owns the clinic owns the records. Regardless of whether it's veterinary. The bigger problem we have in Indiana is a veterinarian dying, and then their spouse gets the records and they don't know what to do with them.
That happens in other professions too, because, yes, the exact thing happened that I'm familiar with.
So it's navigating that. So that's just another, that's not directly related to that initial piece, but just for awareness purposes. It can get a little complicated in that space.
Because if you're operating like a bar, you have to get a license specifically for your establishment. Like, you don't have to do that.
Let's not do it in a bar.
Who knows where you might find yourself?
Just saying.
I was trying to think of the distinction between like facilities that have to meet licensure or meet for certain requirements to operate.
We do have facility requirements.
It falls on the,
Who's responsible for those?
That's a great question.
yeah.
But I think ultimately it's gonna probably be the licensee.
But that would be a board of animal health thing, right? Because like we wouldn't have any jurisdiction of that as a non-licensed holder, right?
The facility requirements are in the vet board.
In the vet, yes.
The licensed veterinarian would have to operate any facility that meets the requirements, otherwise they would be operating such things.
Yeah.
That was a question that came up a lot previously.
Was there not a day? Case.
I think it was an assumption back in the day, whether it was true or not, I don't know.
That's before.
I think some state differences.
Yeah, yes, I do.
For sure. There are some states
for
that
sure.
you have to. And I remember that coming up a few times, and there was kind of some question, where is Indiana in that? But it did.
That's true.
That's what bad, and then where they practice. It has to be.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it gets really.
And I like that you guys bring these up. So back to kind of the original thought, you were issuing a special permit, would the board be in charge of saying like how you get that special permit or like what information you would need to collect?
I think we would have to look at the conditions in which we are allowed to, because they are exempted currently.
Yes.
So I can't
Yeah,
commit to that.
Because I guess what
Yeah.
who's supervised, you know, like, could you ask that question or could you just say like, here's the permit? I was just curious.
Well, you have jurisdiction over the veterinarian, so if nothing else, we can require that if they are supervising someone, they need to tell us.
They need to, you could flip it reverse.
Yeah, I mean, that would still be like the honor system.
If you are a supervising veterinarian of an ECFPG grad, you need to obtain a special permit as a supervising veterinarian of an ECGA, because you would have jurisdiction over that. So it's back kind of a roundabout way of getting there, because it's, but,
I don't think that would encompass,
yeah.
No, I'm
Like,
just
like,
curious,
they-
yeah, with,
but yeah.
because you gave the one example of like theoretically someone was practicing without supervision under this exemption and sort of like.
For you and maybe a few others, like their paid program would be it, so can't we just have something they fill out where they are, there's something that could be here as a student in that?
but I don't know that because it's an exemption, it automatically carves them out. It says you don't have to have license, so therefore you are not in a jurisdiction. So we can't then necessarily require something of them. So
So
we're,
we would have to do it on good faith, like, look, please fill this out. And if they don't, then
And we can
We'll
look at everything. It might be something that we can actually draft and implement a rule.
Yeah.
Is everybody ready? Had enough time to peruse the document? Excellent. Towards.
If it's 40 hours.
To help satisfy or to.
I don't, they don't need to change it, it just needs to be clear.
Are there any questions or concerns on the proposed settlement agreement before you? Does look good.
I might just bring up the rationale behind it, a little bit of the change was as an urgent care facility, trying to get the supervised surgeries. Yeah. How often is a novel surgery that would qualify you to come in, and what are the odds that someone's available to come in right then and there, and that would be rather difficult, which made it tougher. So this seemed like a very good compromise to get a little everything in there. And not only the observation, but reporting back with what we picked up and what changes we might be making and whatnot, self-reflection, I think, which is good.
Paragraph 46 was brought up in that the lab course may be used to help satisfy or go toward the regular and continuing education requirements, not completely fulfill.
Unless it's 40 hours.
Yeah, and I'm happy if you want us to put something in there and initial it. That was just an oversight. We weren't thinking about that.
Yeah, no, I just,
Understand.
I'm in the middle of
With the
audit,
intention.
so that's how I caught it. So I don't care, I mean, I think that I think that is the way that it's, I'm sorry.
I just need to behave, that's all.
I think the way it's written is fine, I just wanted to make sure that the respondent
Clarify.
is clear on that.
I don't even know what the course hours are, to be honest with you. So it might satisfy it, it might not, I'm not sure. The 24th?
Yeah.
Okay, so it won't.
It's a good start.
Yeah.
And that's a good deal. to have that go toward that. So. Other thoughts, comments? Not, we're in a position to maybe accept a motion.
Can I make that motion and accept the settlement agreement?
Well, yeah, okay. Second? Excellent, thank you. Got a motion, a second on the floor. Let's vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Good job, well done.
Thank you very much.
And good luck.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks for working together as well.
It's important.
I'm gonna give this right back.
Be careful going on.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for speaking. Have a good week.
Sure. I go.
I know. Yeah. Yeah, I've been trying.
Yes, because.
Yep, yeah.
Appreciate it.
Long day.
notepad longer.
But you
We'll try harder next time.
could feel.
Right, took
Yeah, it was a great learning experience.
Yes, that's right.
This is nothing.
Yep.
Everybody okay to move on? We were under discussion still. B.
Okay, have we, but my marching orders for the other, the FBG is just to do some more research into it.
Remediation.
Okay, here's the executive order and the Gardner report. I'm not going to go over the executive order or most of the Gardner report, because you guys have already had the opportunity to review that. But page 3 of this document, so the first page is the summary of the executive order. And then the second page is the statute that requires us to review our occupational rules. And then the state contracted with Gardner to do this comprehensive occupational licensing report for us. And this was for all of the occupational licenses, not just the Board of Veterinary Medicine. And there are 4 recommendations for veterinarians and 2 recommendations for RVTs. So the purpose of this exercise is to go through these recommendations and for the board to provide any feedback on what you guys think of these recommendations and if you want to take any action one way or another. So the first recommendation for DVMs is to remove the national criminal background check requirement for initial licensure to align with Illinois. The national criminal background check is that's statutory, and the board can't change that. And I don't know if all licensees or all applicants have to get it, for all of the, the global licenses that the state issues, but veterinarians and RVTs are required to get it. Does anybody have any comments? I mean, I know we can't change the statute, but do you guys strongly feel one way or the other about the background requirement? Like you access, access to criminal substances. You have to have And so that is also the same RVTs. And then, so for DVMs, number 2 is lower the Indiana CE requirement to 12 to 15 per year to align with Kentucky, Michigan, Nebraska, Ohio, and Wyoming. I think we are higher than all of the jurisdictions they reviewed except Illinois. At least for veterinarians.
What is it again?
The CE requirement, so it's 40 hours for veterinarians every 2 years.
You're saying 12 to 15 every 2 years?
Every year, so it'd be like 24 to 30. And some states renew every year. And it's kind of all over the place with that.
And we've already recently allowed more CE flexibility
Yes.
than we've ever had. I just feel like sitting on this board, why would we lower CE requirements with, you know,
100%.
I don't understand it, especially with how, if we're gonna accept more
Right.
access to free online CE where that won't be owners. I mean, that's right, that's the whole purpose of this is to make people more licensable, but we're not taking that, to me, that's not a cost issue. So, 'cause there's tons of free CE out there.
And we opened it up to, people who give presentations or
Right.
write books and
Right, I think
book
that,
report, internships and
yeah.
And there's been situations where people have been audited and they had some life-altering horribleness, and they had something but didn't have all of it. Chosen to take action. Or it went up. So.
so the same recommendation was for RBTs to reduce it from 16 to 5 to 7.5 per year.
It's just not that much.
It's not, it's 8 a year.
We are presenting the findings of the report and the recommendations for discussion of it and the discussion of the board.
So, so for the veterinarians, reduce the application and renewal fees to match or undercut the lowest state fee, which was Illinois. And that's a $100 application fee and a $50 annualized renewal. We charge $150 for the application for the initial licensure, and then it's $100 every 2 years for renewal, and Illinois renews every year. So they're basically paying the same amount in a 2-year period as Indiana. Contrast that to Kentucky and some of the other jurisdictions that charge like $400 for the initial licensure, and I know Kentucky charges $100 for a jurisprudence exam and a ton of other fees associated with licensure, so I don't think.
I think it seems very reasonable.
So we're basically not wanting to change anything.
Well, we still have number 4.
We're wanting to look at it, look into it, and verify that
We're good.
we're good.
Yes.
So number 4 is this is for DVMs only. Consider an alternative pathway, a renewal pathway, such as reduced CE for licensees with a clean disciplinary record or expanded acceptance of self-study CE.
I feel like we
Don't we already have expanded?
already
The
experienced.
self-study.
Yeah, but see, we still allow self-study. And this was conducted before our rule even went into effect. We're pretty liberal with, as long as, if it's considered self-study or not, they can apply for, if it's not approved, then they can apply for CE for a course if it's not approved, and unless it's on some other discipline besides veterinary medicine, it's probably gonna be approved.
And if I'm old enough, I can say this now, I don't think we need less CE as we get older. Like, okay, great, I have a clean license, but let's keep it there. Like, let's,
And CE helped keep it clean, you
Right.
could say, you
I
could
mean,
argue.
don't we always say, like, once you think you don't have anything else to learn, you shouldn't be doing this now anymore, so.
Well, I think that we've seen pretty rapidly the changes in standard of care for veterinary medicine as it advances, and the only way to keep up with that is to continue your education in that space. And so I think we may even find, I think some of the cases historically we've seen is kind of falls into that space where the medicine has advanced, or the surgical procedures advanced, or the standard of care is advanced, and the veterinarian kept up. And so, yeah,
not that he was just saying what he thought we wanted to hear, but Tim Fleck was talking to how amazing the courses he took and how he wished he'd done them 10 or 20 years sooner or whatever. So I think he enjoyed what
He was
the
a lot
extra that he
lighter
picked
today,
up.
I thought.
He was off.
A lot what?
A lighter.
Later.
He felt good about what he did and.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was pleased with the change. And having a good record, you get credit for operating the law. You get
That is the reward.
Didn't you used to get like a gold sticker or something for
Oh,
good behavior?
I do.
I feel like the AVMA, or the IVMA will give you a certificate if you get your CE done early.
Ooh, or if you get more than the
Or
required.
the required, you can get.
I will not give you a reward if you send in more than required. You only need 40, not 172.
ignoring 41.
That makes you feel very impactful.
All right, that's all I got on those.
What's next? Report on foot? I would be open to revisiting the criminal,
Take a break.
The background check?
not the background check, but remember we were supposed to like narrowly define what caused a personal appearance, and then we just all adopted the same one, which was like the definition.
Convictions of concern.
Yes.
It's on the agenda for 6 months from now.
Right.
I mean,
It's not lost.
I do too.
Okay.
Keep showing up. We'll get there.
Did you have some thoughts on it?
Yeah. Been on the board for 10 years now. I'm not who have ever once turned away the 21-year-old who's now 32, and I was like, oh, sorry you had to come tell us about that stupid thing you did in college. Congratulations. I just think we could weed it out a little bit more, like, have you abused animals, are you abusing drugs and you're handling them? That would warrant us being involved. The one lady who like stole something from Target one time, and that was,
That was a long time
it
ago.
was,
We were early on the board and
Yeah.
I'm going, shoplifting, really?
yeah, it was just a
Okay.
weird thing, but I was like, I don't know. Like, the law will take care of that. Anyway, good to know, I'll keep it to
Want
myself.
Kyle to go next to give you a break or you?
No. I'm good. Okay, I got my report. I'm not gonna go through all this data, at the litigation filed, and I'll post discipline and everything. Dr. Sunbury has been busy with 3 settlement conferences this quarter, or this last quarter. We've had 5 VT&E retakes, interviews and approved, nothing for the NAPLE retakers. And we've approved 2 CE courses, for the new members. One, as a liaison, Dr. Sunbury does most of the settlement conferences. Just as an officer, that's kind of what he does as the liaison as well. Not that anybody else can't do it. Sometimes the parties request Dr. Fielder and show up. Dr. Fielder doesn't show up. And then the retake, the exam retakes, the board has previously gave me authority for the 4th and 5th retakes to interview and essentially approve unless there's something that really needs to come before the board. I think a sixth time would probably need to come before the board. We haven't had any of those yet. We've only had one person request a NAFLE appeal, and we did it. That is a lot more involved though than the VT&E retakes. We get a lot of requests for the VT&E. And then in conjunction with Dr. Shipman, the CE approval is done with me and Dr. Shipman. Unless there's something really weird about it, we're trying to keep those from coming before the board for a couple of reasons. And notably because you guys only meet quarterly, and these programs, they might submit it for like a month out. Just so you guys know.
They're pretty consistent, kind of drug rep, DE types of situations that aren't already race approved. So,
Yeah.
We used to be approving stuff that happened 6 weeks previously, so.
Yeah. Which is fine, but
You find out after the fact that you actually did get credit for that thing you went to. So.
it happens to lawyers too. And need approval. Okay, so on applications, these numbers are still wonky, and we've received 55 applications for DBMs, 85 have been issued, and at the time that I ran this report, that 59 were pending and 5 were renewed. These are always going to be like a rolling basis. They also include applications for licensure by reciprocity, and we get them multiple times. I mean, people are getting licensed everywhere. So there may have even been a slight influx with the change in the law, reciprocity, that people actually know that it's out there now. We'll talk about that in a minute. CSRs, we don't issue those, so I'm not going to go over those numbers, but they're pretty good. And then RBTs, we've had 31 applicants, 26 issued, 30 pending, and 10 renewed.
On the DVMs, can you tell graduating Purdue folks how many got licensure in Indiana?
So off the top of my head, I think there were about 60 that Dr. Marsh sent over, because he just sends all of the degree conferrals to me. And that way they don't have to get their transcripts and submit. So some of them have applied for licensure, some of them won't, but he just sends everyone. So there are probably about 60, and I think we've had probably 30 to 40 actually apply.
And that's 84, is that the class then?
BDM. Are you talking BDM or?
Currently.
For 2 more years, right?
And to Brittany's point, I have had some conversations with Purdue to take a look at how do we continue to streamline that licensing process of new grads. I think that's an incentive to stay in Indiana as well, and how can we help facilitate that process. And so looking at some of the barriers of licensure for a new grad, specifically a Purdue new grad, and what can this group do, but also what can the vet school do to help facilitate that. So that might mean something like the vet school may consider bringing in a fingerprinter, so you don't have to go off-site to get your fingerprints done to facilitate licensing. So looking at, how can we make sure that they are day one ready and have their license as they're crossing the stage, basically. Trying to get it kind of hone in on really shortening that time.
Put off having to take the nav with.
Baby steps.
But so looking at just kind of some of the technical pieces so that we can kind of put a smooth transition into practicing especially for our first grads.
And then as far as numbers, good news is we're back up to over 3,000 veterinarians. I don't know how we really did that, because we were minus like 250 after renewal back in October, and it stayed that way for several months. But then we have 2,300 RVTs, which those numbers have all probably gone up a little bit since I ran this report. We have a total of 4 people on actively licensed or on probation. Prior to this meeting, yeah, so 3 vets and 1 RVT. Well, actually, the RVT was today, she was removed, so then it's gonna be 2, and then add 1, so actually it might be the same, except the RVT. So the continuing education audits, we audited 271 DVNs, and these numbers have changed too, but when I ran this report last week, we had 200 passed, 49 with no response, and 22 had failed or were pending because we were waiting for maybe some additional information. Second notices went out last Friday on the 24th.
How do we send those?
So the first and second notice are email.
Okay.
Now, we also sent another separate email outside of the PLA, like, email system. Denise actually sent the email to all of the people who were selected for audit to say, hey, just FYI, you were audited. Just in case you didn't get that email, you're getting this one. And we had a couple of people reach out and say, I didn't get the audit. We know that SBC Global and maybe Verizon, AT&T, different emails have been blocked by, I think, the state.
By the state.
Or vice versa, the email, the carrier blocks.
Yeah.
So.
Came up last time.
Yeah, so I know we've had several people send their stuff in since last Friday, and then they got their second notice. And so all those numbers have changed. We have a handful that are waiting for me to talk to Dr. Rodenberger about hardship waivers. So a couple of those will probably be granted. And then once we have like a final number, I think we're gonna we will call and email these folks and maybe send a letter via US mail to say, hey, the audited.
I guess that was my question, is if we were gonna do any sort of, I just know there were a couple people who came in last time and they were like, I didn't get any, and I think at that point, we had only done outreach, and so that's great. I know some will still come in here and say they didn't get it, it is what it is.
And they may not, I think the way that the statute's written and the way that we talked about doing this the last time we talked about the plan for this was that if they do appeal and they have the documentation that they had the continuing education during the time.
Yeah.
That they would not, that they would win their appeal and would not have to pay the penalty or take anything up. But once we do that notice of noncompliance by statute, it has to go out via certified mail.
Okay, that's, yeah.
But I think that we have, I think we have pretty good numbers of people actually, maybe compared to the last time this was done.
I've also taken a look at the list just to see, so like we're monitoring the names, like, so like we don't want to be insensitive and still sending it to like past and that kind of stuff. So we're trying to,
Yeah.
Because if they've died since the last license renewal, which isn't that long ago, but is enough time that it can very well happen, and they may have gotten caught into this. So we're looking at that as well. And there's some on the list that I know they've received it. I don't know why they haven't responded yet. So continue to monitor the human part of it and once it's been notified.
Yeah, I think that it all worked out last time. I just know we went through this previous cycle. There were a few opportunities where we probably could have been a little bit more clear in our upfront communication. But also, it was always pointed out to me that you're a licensed professional and it's your job to maintain an email address and be able to receive notice about said license, so.
And you had to give your email address to renew your license, so that's the email you gave.
So there's that.
Do you have a fax machine?
We can do it via email. And we can receive them via email.
But only if the state doesn't block the email.
Yeah, right. But we get that.
We're somebody that.
22 failed on both, that's suspicious.
I know, I thought that too. So 208 RBTs audited, 133 passed, 43 no response, 22 failed or pending. And again, those second notices were sent out, and I know those numbers have all changed too with no passing. Any questions on that? So we, by statute, for you guys as a refresher or for the new folks, by statute, if you choose to do the random audit, it has to be more than 1% and less than 10%. We chose about 9% for both, and we did them both at the exact same time. So, because we haven't done this yet, I would like to say I'm very thankful for Dana, our new assistant board director, who's here at the end of the table. For all of you who don't know Dana or remember her, she was the assistant board director for the Board of Veterinary Medicine a few years ago. She worked with Cindy Bott. So some of you might remember her.
Let's have it on the board.
And
You're doomed. You're gonna be in for a couple of days. You're here for years.
It's like being sentenced.
We'll tell you.
Or being a criminal.
Oh, no, wait. I'm gonna be here a while.
as for the AABSB updates, the 2026 annual meeting is September 23rd to 26th in Providence, Rhode Island. Dr. Peelman will be the delegate and Natalie Goodwin will be the alternate delegate. And Dr. Shipman and I are both attending the meeting as well. And then I emailed you guys the AABSB Model Practice Act and Model Regulations. If you have feedback, great. If not, we share it. And if I will put something together if you want to provide feedback on it. They're due, one's due like September 1st and one's due October, 2 of them are due October 1st. So it won't be addressed at the meeting. Those are like the bylaws and some other stuff, but these are just drafts that they're working on.
I glanced at it quickly and I don't want to get deep now, but any quick takeaways that might catch our attention?
They're walking a very fine line. Intentionally.
Oh,
A very
with the
intentional line.
VCPR.
That was,
To not, basically, they're not trying to, while the organization took a stance at the last meeting to say the VCPR has to be established in person, or their bylaws need to reflect that. They are trying to stay open with the recognition that several of the members already have rules and laws in place that allow it to not be established in person. So they're basically kind of putting them both out there and saying, here's model language, do with as you choose. So, which they're in a tough position as an organization. So they're trying to just say, here's language. We're not picking.
and then I'm trying to remember if it was in that or if it was in a separate thing that we got as far as the mid-level. Is there anything about that in? I saw, and I can't remember if it was in the bylaw changes or if that was.
Are you still getting AABSB emails though?
Yes.
That might be great.
Okay.
We got it.
'Cause
I
there's
know one of them was
arguments about what was said.
veterinary practice facilities, which I'm excited about because that's one of the roles that we are going to tackle next because ours are so outdated. So having that knowledge.
Whatever I'm thinking of has to do with whether they supported a test or putting a test out there or agreeing to be the person to oversee the test.
Oh,
and how
yes.
that started some.
Yeah, so one of the things, so with that,
I just said that.
mid-level practitioner, so something between an RVT and a veterinarian. There's Colorado passed it through a referendum, and so there's maybe one person going through. Well, do they even have a course out there? I don't even know if they have.
Yeah.
I think
Do
it's
they know?
forced to be effective already.
Yeah, but you don't have to be an RBT to be in the course.
Okay.
That's what.
So I think that the AABSC's concern is that if you're like, this is coming, this jurisdiction already has it and they have a course, but like, we don't have a test for it. We don't have anything to ensure competency. And so they don't support the mid-level practitioner, but if it's going to be there, then somebody needs to establish some sort of testing, testing or.
You want my 2 cents on it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if veterinarians are using technicians the way they should be, they're basically mid-level practitioners already. And why don't we just create like a VTS pathway to then be able to get them to be like a PA, for example, or you can call them a nurse practitioner, whatever. But then give them the ability to, under a veterinarian, prescribe, diagnose, under certain like disease states or things like that, rather than having like, they're practically already to that level. They really just need a little bit more, probably more law training than anything to be able to prescribe. Maybe I'm just speaking for trained veterinary technicians, but I think.
And you're saying if an RVT goes down the VTS specialization pathway within their specialization, that should be considered.
Because that's basically what's happening on the nurse side,
Sure.
right? Like, you have nurse anesthetists, we have
Sure.
specialists in anesthesiology that, yeah, basically that's what they're doing. Just why not give those VTS, it's already there, those VTS pathways then to prescribe and diagnose. That's my
I like that better than what's happening now.
Yeah.
In Colorado.
Because right now, yeah, you have a VTS, but in most places, even at Purdue, it doesn't really mean much. I mean, it's not like they're doing anything more than they were already doing at Purdue. They get like a $2,000 one-time bonus and then that's it. But they have all this extra training. Why aren't we letting them do what? That's my 2 cents. Get off my soapbox.
This is irrelevant, but a step backwards from that is there's a lot of RVTs out there that are not being utilized up
Right,
to what they can. And
absolutely.
I mean, get them doing more of what they can be doing already, that they're just not, whether it's their practice, their supervising veterinarian, whatever, not allowing it or not realizing it or not open to it yet.
Right.
Not seeing the light, but where we have to create some new titles, make sure we're utilizing them.
Right,
to the
yeah,
full
because we may not have
potential.
the need that we think we have if we're just utilizing our technicians to their potential.
Is that globally or is that maybe just India?
No, it's globally. It's worse in other states, honestly. I would say.
All right, well, the last thing I have is just the legislative update. If you'll recall, the IVMA brought a bill, or worked with the General Assembly on a bill for changing the Practice Act for licensure without examination for both veterinarians and RVTs. And this was really just a housekeeping cleanup issue because a few years ago, the General Assembly said that all the healthcare professions, including veterinary medicine, can receive licensure by reciprocity. And there was no 5-year requirement of practice like there was in the Practice Act. So the General Assembly took out the 5-year practice requirement and essentially just said that that you could get licensure by reciprocity as long as you follow the reciprocity statute and all other requirements of the Practice Act, which is what we've been doing for 3 or 4 years. It was confusing though, because people would only look at the Practice Act and not look at all of the other laws that apply to veterinarians and RVTs, because Title 25 is written in a way that it encompasses all of the disciplines that are regulated. And then like the Practice Act is just very specific to veterinary medicine only within Title 25. So, and it was conflicting with this other statute.
We talked the last time about meeting the roles and responsibilities.
Yes.
Did a lot of that directed.
Do you mean the last meeting or the last General Assembly?
Last meeting.
But
I think we
We're
started
gonna
on
look
it.
at
ago.
think we brought
discussion.
it up.
Oh, was that that was like the supervision piece,
Yeah.
right? Is that what you're referring to?
Maybe,
Yes.
I don't know.
But I think it was before.
We have done extensive scope of practice discussions that we are going, I've been holding them off until Dr. Johnson can actually join us because this is her first meeting where she's technically on the board, but she already had a pre-planned vacation with the kids, so she'll be here in October. And then we can.
Resume
Okay.
those conversations. Yeah. And that's an article making discussion.
Might have some thoughts there.
Maybe.
We're trying.
Bring your soapbox.
You're probably gonna regret.
No, we're not.
No.
No, be great. That's the other thing here. Did you know that you can do RDT online? You're not licensed. Tell whoever's running your website. You can't be called an RDT. We haven't had as many of those. I think you guys sent out some notices and
Well, we did send the dear colleague letter
stuff. Yeah.
to the veterinarians that you guys are gonna issue fines of $1,000 for
Oh, we can do that?
every violation of a non-registered veterinary technician being identified as a tech or RVT or technician or anything like that on their website. Now, that said, the AG's office would have to bring a complaint before us. I mean, I don't think we have a mechanism in this.
Send out
But if we
invoices.
could.
Paul can be filing complaints from home.
As he should be. I can't. As long as they're not about forced industry,
Industry.
those poor Amish people.
Oh, yeah.
All 72 of them we filed.
Screwworms.
Let's talk screwworms. So as I'm sure many of you have by now heard, as of June 3rd, the United States had its first detection of New World screwworm in Texas. So obviously that is of top concern for our livestock across the country, really, because unfortunately they do not know boundaries. And so with New World screwworm, I will say a helpful tool to kind of look at the current status of New World screwworm across the country is screwworm.gov. So to date, there's been 42 cases of screwworm in the United States. Something to clarify that's a little different than other species that we talk about is each case is an animal that's infested. So if two animals on the same site are both infested, that's two cases, where in a lot of other disease programs, we would consider that one case because it's one. We don't necessarily count cases by birds and that kind of stuff. So just a little differentiation there. The USDA does a really nice dashboard on their website. It is a little misleading, so I want to caveat that in case you do go to look at that. So it classifies cases as active or inactive. So there's currently 8 active cases and 34 inactive cases. That is only reflecting the status of that animal's lesions, right? So infestation zones or other regulatory control measures that are put in place are still in place even after that specific case is resolved and considered an active. So generally, those regulatory control measures are infestation zones, which are upwards of 20 kilometer circles, in which all livestock and in some instances companion animal species are quarantined without prior inspection by a veterinarian and/or treatment. Those have to be in place for 3 life cycles of the fly after the initial detection. So the life cycle of this fly is 21 days. So we're looking at a minimum of 63 days that these regulatory zones are in place around each of these detections. So the Texas Animal Health Commission has a really good website that shows the zones that are currently active in Texas. The reason I bring that up is because, like I said, that is where the regulatory piece comes into play. So Indiana has put restrictions on animals that are originating from an infestation zone or going or entering and then eventually leaving that infestation zone. So I outlined those additional requirements in my report to the board, but the main takeaway there is the rest of Texas or any other state that is outside of an infestation zone, there are no additional requirements, right? So we're trying to recognize a free area as a free area and then infested areas as infested areas, and that's where we're going to put additional requirements. The additional requirements are generally a shorter CBI timeline. So instead of your typical up to 10 days of inspection, we've shortened that time frame window. And then for most species, put in a treatment protocol in place preventatively. So that's the big takeaway there. As far as how we are combating New World screwworm in Texas. So the USDA has worked with Mexico to open up their sterile fly breeding facility. And that sterile fly breeding facility should be at full production by the end of the year. That's 100 million flies a week will be produced out of that facility. Panama continues to produce 100 million flies a week out of that facility. And they're hoping in the next 18 months, the Texas facility, which will be our only domestic production, will be up to 100 million flies a week with the goal to get it to 300 million flies a week. So at full capacity, they're looking at 500 million flies a week being produced by these three facilities. Why is that the goal? That is the approximate number of sterile flies needed to be produced per week that were in place when we successfully eradicated this fly in the 70s. It took about 500 million flies a week. So the facilities that originally had produced them have shuttered because there wasn't a need for domestic production. So they're trying to get that production back up and running. So that is all in place. We're working in that direction. USDA announced either yesterday or earlier this morning, I can't remember when I read it. They're putting funds towards an additional dispersal facility in Arizona. That wouldn't be the production of the fly, but a dispersal facility. And they've awarded upwards of $100 million in innovation grants to contemplate how can we do this whole process better and more efficient through research. So a lot of that is academic support, but industry-driven priorities as well. So one of those proposals is, so the sterile fly works via that the sterile male will breed with the female. That mating will be unsuccessful, and then that female will not mate again for the rest of her life. So then you stop that life cycle, you decrease your population. But that means of the 100 million that are produced each week in Panama, half of those flies are not worthwhile because they are sterile female flies. So the goal would be to produce 500 million sterile male flies, and they are working on the technology to do just that, the NovaFly. So they have some initial EPA regulations that they're navigating to get that fly approved and produced. In Indiana, we're working with the Office of the State Chemist to get provide additional treatment resources for either veterinarians or livestock owners. This would be more premises application as opposed to animal application of like an insecticide. And so that jurisdiction is by the Office of the State Chemist, that's the pesticide review folks up there. So they're working on getting those additional clarifications. They're basically they're adding Indiana to the label claims that it can be allowed in Indiana. So we're proactively working with them to do that. As far as wildlife detections, there's not been a wildlife detection in the United States yet. They've not successfully trapped a wild type fly in the United States. So we know it's here. This is not unprecedented. In Mexico, when they were trapping their flies, I believe the number I saw was they didn't trap their first fly until after their 15,000th case in livestock was identified. So we're very early. 42 cases is a bad thing, but not the worst thing, right? That perspective matters. It's kind of across, I'd say, the southwestern third of Texas is where these cases are. There has been a detection in New Mexico in a dog. That seemed to be a very isolated case, and they don't have anything in and around that detection. And then obviously our human health counterparts are being vigilant, especially to those vulnerable populations of humans, because Central America and Mexico have reported over 1,500 human cases of myiasis in humans. And so typically, again, in those vulnerable, homeless, elderly populations. So the USDA is working with Mexico via Arizona to start reopening the southern border for livestock. If it isn't open today, they're in the process. They've announced the reopening of that border. That's a pretty big deal. The challenge that they're going to be facing is this fly does have a pretty far home range, so it can just move in the air and fly around, but it moves the furthest when it's in its larval form on an animal, and the animal moves, right? And the animal's transported. So that's why we are really focusing in on, good inspections of the animals and a treatment with an approved product to disrupt that life cycle, to decrease the risk for the rest of the country. So if we do see a detection and say pick any state in the country that's kind of outside of that southwest area, it will likely have been due to a movement of an animal and the fly being involved in the loop. So it's a pretty gnarly bug. It's not one that we should take lightly, but we are continuing to watch Texas navigate this very, very complicated process. I don't quite understand. I can't wrap my brain around how they're actually doing it, the logistical part, because it's an incredible lift to get that done. So we have conversations 2 to 3 times a week with all the state veterinarians across the country to talk about this topic. And so there's one right now. And so to try to learn from what Texas is experiencing with the movements of animals are really across the state. So what that would look like in Indiana, or could look like in Indiana, just to kind of frame this, is a 20-kilometer circle in Indiana, and that's a radius circle, would basically we'd be looking at quarantining at the county level. And that would be all livestock species and potentially any animal species as well. And they would not be able to move without a permit issued by our office. So there's that. We don't know. That's a lift.
Indiana suspects as well.
Yes, because we are taking a kind of a novel approach to, not novel, but we have some resources with the Indiana Department of Health. They have medical entomologists on staff that they are the bug people. So they are the ones that are typically doing surveillance for West Nile mosquitoes, Tripoli mosquitoes, tick surveillance across the state. And so we have partnered with them to, as we get reports in of suspected New World screwworm cases, we are screening them, working with the producer to try to either get a sample or a clear picture, and then having those vetted by a medical entomologist in lieu of having to work them completely up as a foreign animal disease and sending those samples out to the National Laboratory in Ames, Iowa. So that has worked well for us. We've had between 10 and 15 of those suspects. We are encouraging folks to really hone in and focus their reporting on unusual wounds and larva in those wounds as opposed to trying to report an unusual fly. Because we've had, you can imagine the reports we've had when it comes to flies. They can't get the picture, they can't capture the fly is not dead, they can't, all the parts and pieces. So we're saying, focus in on the wound. If you have a wound of concern and there's not unusual larva, regardless if you're, a constituent, a producer, a veterinarian, take a picture, pull a sample. You can take the larva, put it in 70% isopropyl alcohol to preserve it, and then we'll work with our team to either take the sample directly or take pictures of it and send it to an entomologist. So, yeah, people are on alert. They are reporting in. They do care an awful lot, and so I think that's pretty consistent with what we're seeing across the country. Questions on screwworm? I'll do briefly on iPad.
Gotta ask, the sterile fly storyline, she mates once.
Yep.
Is she just hanging good for the rest of her life, or does she die X number of days after mating? How does?
Yeah. So she'll mate once, but she'll lay eggs off of that initial mating several times, egg packets. And the egg packets are like you can visually see them around the wound. And how they stack their egg packets helps differentiate the type of screwworm fly versus another bot fly on their egg packet structuring. More than I ever cared to know, but now you do. And so, yeah, she will die. It doesn't necessarily shorten her life, but it just prevents her. She just won't have successfully lay any eggs, or they'll be infertile eggs, because she will only make that one time.
So if we see eggs, I mean, obviously the larva is better. Can you tell if the eggs are empty? Can you still tell if it's a screwworm?
Can someone? I think.
Like if you took a picture and if the pattern was there, but you didn't, I can't imagine you not having larva too, but it's just
Yeah.
interesting.
They apparently, the entomologists tell us. Yeah, it's like a kind of a.
If they try that,
Yeah.
they still like.
That's my understanding from what I've heard from the entomologist. That's weird. Bird flu, real quick.
Great.
Yeah. So, so our most recent case in bird flu was June 18th. That was in a backyard flock in LaGrange County of 24 birds. Up until that point, from October to June, we had 153 cases of influenza in the state and depopulated a total of 2,040,000 related to that incident. We are currently, knock on everything, in our countdown for achieving influenza freedom for the state. So basically, once disinfection is completed on the last previously positive premises, we have to wait 28 days without a detection to be able to declare freedom. So our tentative freedom declaration date is August 13th. So we are trying our damnedest. We desperately need to get across that finish line. So on the cow side, we are, the country is still seeing influenza in dairy cattle, predominantly in Idaho, Utah, and a little bit in Texas. Utah and in Texas are genetically from Idaho. So if you remember, this originally started in Texas. And Texas kind of had its, the cases that are now being found in Texas were not previously positive. Texas originally had it with their own kind of introduction down there. They are related to likely mutants from Idaho. The challenge that we still have that unfortunately Utah experienced firsthand is this virus, even once it's in dairy cattle, is still incredibly contagious and transmissible to poultry. So Utah experienced this. They had a layer site that went down with 1.1 million birds, that the genetic fingerprint of that influenza virus was from their dairies in Utah. The response is obviously different. We don't euthanize and depopulate cattle. We do depopulate on the poultry side, so that's pretty devastating to that farmer there. So California has largely wrapped up their response. They had upwards of 750 to 800 cases last year. I think they're working through some lingering 2 or 3 cases. What they're finding is even in some of these large dairies, they continue to test positive because they will have a chronic carrier in there, a chronic shedder. And so they're working to find and identify those cows and pull them out of the lactating herd. And those herds are clearing up and going negative. So we are actively working with several research institutions to better understand influenza. As soon as you think you know influenza, I promise you don't. And it continues to remind us of that. And so we are working with folks at Purdue, folks at Ohio State, folks at University of Minnesota, as well as USDA Ag Research Service to research various parts of the incident here in Indiana. Anything from the mortality rate of ducks to what's the risk of wind moving the virus, and doing some wind and weather modeling, to other genomic factors that may play a role, looking at peridomestic mammals as well. So do mice and other creatures in and around a farm play a role in spreading it from farm to farm? So they are actively looking at those for us, because we are not an academic institution. We are the regulator, but we try to partner with folks to help us better understand that. So, questions on either of those 2 topics or any other?
It's a lot of information. I don't have anything else. Adjourn.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Do we need a second?
Yes, I was thinking kind of next week.
Next meeting's